It's sci.
Comic exposure begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Comic Exposure Podcast. My name is Josh, and with me is my summer reader, my little page turner, the one, the only.
Take a look. It's in a book. Comic Exposure. Travis Ratz here.
Travis and I are bringing you the Comic Exposure Podcast, where we dive deep into graphic novels and trades. We've wrapped up our summer event. We read Dungeon Crawler Carl to get us out of that summer event. And then Travis and I decided, look, we talked about a graphic novel based on a book. Why don't we just talk about some books that we've been reading over the summer that are non-comics? Every once in a while, we do a variant episode. This is one of those variant edition episodes right here. Non-comic summer reading. We're still, we're in August. August is technically still summer. So we thought we'd talk about what we're reading that's not comic books. And there are people who go like, this is the comic show. Talk about comics. And we don't want to all the time. Sometimes we want to talk about other stuff. Yeah. Sometimes we're going to talk about other stuff. So we're going to talk about what we're reading that's not comic books. So to kick off that conversation, Travis, you've mentioned previously that summer is your time to read novels. Can you explain why summer is your novel reading time? Why is that your time to read novels?
Yeah, so I think let's start off with talking about our reading habits during the year and how that changes during the summer. For me, obviously, we have this comic book podcast. So I'm usually every week.
Wait, what? We do what?
Yeah. So it's called Comic Exposure. And it originally started off as a way for us to talk about comic books, but also expose people to new comic books. As it's mutated over the years, not just a way for us to hang out and talk about comic books. And we open it up for the entire world to hang out in.
Yeah, now I remember. Yeah.
Once a week, I usually always have a running trade or graphic novel that we're reading for the podcast per week, right? 3 or 4 episodes per month on a good month. So there's always a trade to be read. But as we know, trades are, roughly 4 to 6, sometimes 8 issues. So this will take up a lot of reading time. And so I always have a book going. I always have a book going because my reading habits are when I sit down to go to sleep, before I go to sleep, I'm always reading. So sometimes that's a comic book, sometimes that's a novel, sometimes that's a nonfiction book. So I always have one of those 3 things going. Yeah. On a bad night, if I'm really tired, I'm reading 15 minutes and then I'm lights out. But on a good night, sometimes it's like, and I got a good book in my hands, I'm reading for several hours. During the school year, that's limited because I'm super exhausted after work. But in summer, when I can wake up whenever I want, when I can lounge around on the couch midday, read a book, take a nap, wake up, read it again, the sky's the limit on what we're reading. So in the summertime, I can usually get through a stack of books, oftentimes 6 to 8 books. The summer is a little bit lighter because I'm taking my master's courses and those have a lot of readings to them. But I love summer reading because it allows me to engage with reading, in particular fiction books during the day and not just before bed. And that, to answer your question, is typically what I read during the summer. I look for a good fiction book that typically falls into one of 2 genres, fantasy or sci-fi, although I'm not opposed to it. And that usually kind of makes up my summer reading. How about you? What are your reading habits during, heavy work times? And then how do your reading habits change on vacation?
Yeah, I think you and I are pretty similar. Like I usually have 3 books going at a time, 1 comic for the show, or maybe an extra one if I'm doing it. And then I run 2 books at a time. I treat it like TV shows before bed, right? Like I'll read a couple chapters in one book and then I'll go, okay, time to change the channel. And then I'll read a couple chapters in another book. So I usually have about 2 books going plus whatever trade I'm reading for the show or just to read a comic. And that's normally my habit. My summer, I used to read a lot more, just sit and read during the summer. Cause we used to do, when my son was younger, we would spend a week in California at the beach. And that is like prime reading. And I'd usually get 2-3 books read during that week, right? Because you're sitting at the beach, you're reading a book, you're sitting in the Airbnb, there's not a lot to do, right? So
you hate your wife and kids, so you don't want to talk to them.
No, but like we had gone to the same kind of place year after year after year, right? At some point, you all just get to this point where you're like, it's really comfortable to sit around and not do anything, right? Like we play card games, we make dinner together, we go down to the beach. But like, you know, like at some point you go like, I'm just hanging, I'm just reading, right?
Yeah.
I'm not really a get in the ocean kind of guy, right? I'm a sit on the beach and read kind of guy, right? So that's my beach enjoyment. But we haven't done that in a couple of years. So my summer reading is a little different. I don't think I read more in the summer like I used to. I used to read more in the summer. In fact, I used to find summer the great time to kind of either get through a big, what's the popular book out right now, or start my reread of something that I always enjoyed, right? So I would do a lot of like, oh, summer is a good time to reread, you know,
Two Towers.
Yeah, right. Or it's a great time to reread The Gunslinger, right? And do that, or reread Dune or something like that. That would be a good summer read. Plus whatever like pop, you know, what's the new movie coming out that there's a book based on? That's kind of was my summer reading. But now I just read before bed. That's normally what I do. So I don't know that I have a bigger stack over the summer. And I don't know that I look for anything in particular now to get me through summer. But I think I find myself gravitating to the same stuff you do, right? I think it's probably just like what we grew up reading, right?
Yeah.
I still read fantasy. I still read sci-fi, and I read horror books. Those are the books I read, right? Occasionally I'll read something that's a little slice of life. Occasionally I'll read something that maybe you might consider a mystery or something like that. But most of the time, the genres that I'm falling into are I'm a genre reader, right? Sci-fi, horror, and fantasy.
Now, do you, in summertime, do you gravitate to standalone books, or do you use that to start like a series that you've heard about that you haven't read?
I used to read a lot more series. I think now that my reading habits have changed, right? I used to read series, either that would be like, you know, when I read all of, you know, why is that Stephen King? I just said The Gunslinger. Now I can't remember.
Yeah,
the Dark Tower, right? Like I'll read all the Dark Tower, or I'll read Old Man's War, or I'll read what's the crap. It was a sci-fi
Joe
show.
Abercrombie stuff, or
I would read something like that. I will tell you now, I love a 200 to 300 page book and a one and done, like that's it. If that 230 pages, that's like the chef's kiss of a book for me. I don't know if it's like the way I read, because I like to read two things at once, but there's a couple of sci-fi books that I really want to read, but I'm like, I don't have the patience for 700 pages, 800 pages right now.
Oh, absolutely. Like I'm looking at the books that I have here. Like mine's like 300 pages, 350. That's a week. That's a book a week, right? If you have other obligations to fulfill. And there is something encouraging about that. There is something very fulfilling just about the crushing out of books in the summer, because I always go visit my folks at their house and I stack the books up, and you watch the pile go up. There's something very fulfilling about it. We were a generation of people that were really pushed to read. And
the pizza. Remember, you get a free personal pizza.
Yeah. And it was almost quantity over quality. Where it was just like, oh, I don't care what you're reading, just like read and stack it. So I don't know if this is a healthy way to be a reader, but it does feel like I'm a good boy. Yeah. Even though I enjoy reading, I'm a lit major, I'm an English teacher. Like I like reading. It's a part of my lifestyle. But in the summertime, when I go away from just reading before bed, it feels like it's not just a lifestyle, but I'm actually challenging myself to, like, it's just like more, you know, it's like, that was amateur stuff before bed. Now we're in the professional leisure class of life, you know?
Yeah. So talk to me, Travis. You're reading books this summer. What are some books you've read this summer? What are you reading? What are you diving into?
Yeah, so I got my stack here of these are the ones that I've read so far since June. And I actually did, I don't know if I should say this, but I did put them in the order from which I liked least to which I liked most. Not saying that none of them are worth reading, but I am also at this stage now where typically, even if a book is so, I'll finish it, especially if it's only like 300 or 400 pages. If it's 800 to 1,000 pages and I'm like on page 200, I'm not digging it, I'll put it down. But if it's in that range, I'll finish it. And thank goodness, because there are some books that don't blossom until the last 100 pages. And some of the ones that I'll talk about today. So I've got my stack here. How do we want to do this? Do you want to like just go like book for book?
I mean, let's go book for book. What are you reading this? Like, what's one you're reading this summer? So, tell me what did you like about it? And did it make a good summer read?
Yeah. So one of the books I read this summer was Gareth Powell's Jitterbug. And this is a sci-fi novel. And it takes place in space. And the best way to explain it is really this felt so much like that show Firefly, the Joss Whedon. This felt like a real Joss Whedon show in novel form.
But with like less sexual harassment and, you know, treating women poorly on set.
Not in the book, but when I was reading it, I was inappropriately touching women and offering them jobs. So I tried to do the heavy lifting for it. Joking. So this felt like Firefly. It felt like very Joss Whedon as far as the types of characters that were in here.
Dialogue.
Yes. It was more like witty banter back and forth. A ragtag space crew that filled in all the typical archetypes from like even in this you have the like Firefly, the hippy dippy female mechanic to the guarded debonair captain to the hard-headed fill in the blank position on the ship here. So if you dig Firefly and that type of stuff, and you feel like you can't get enough of it, like Jitterbug is definitely like a companion piece to it. Like you won't have to miss a beat on any of that genre, and this will feel like it's just completing that. Now, for me, in novel form, like a Joss Whedon show in novel form, felt a little bit predictable for me, which made it a very quick read because I was just, I got this. And you can knock this out in a couple of days. But if you don't like that type of genre, archetype, I don't want to say cookie cutter as a bad connotation, but then stay away from this. But this is down the middle, classic space adventure, getting the crew together, going on a mission, sci-fi.
All right. I think one of the first books I read this summer, I don't have it with me because I already loaned it out to somebody. I already gave it up to be like, here, read. I read a book called Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. A kind of interesting. It is a World War I, no man's land. An angel, they hear a sound in the middle of no man's land, and it's this sort of like whining, ethereal, like yelling thing going on. And a group of soldiers have been sent out into no man's land to kill the whining thing, to stop it, because it's just.
By that you mean the between the trenches, the parts.
Yes, the between the trenches where you get shot and murdered, right? So their job is to go out there and like end this. They believe it's a soldier out there dying, and it is just obnoxious and annoying in the sound. And so they essentially the chief or the commander says, go out there, end this guy's life, right? Because
end the suffering.
You got to stop it. So a group of soldiers goes out and they discover that it is an angel. and it is an angel that has landed in the middle of no man's land. And throughout the book, everybody sees the angel in their own vision of what an angel should look like. Right.
Oh.
So someone sees it as their loved one who they left behind to go to the war. Another one sees it as the angel from, like the medallion that their father gave them that had like the religious symbol of what an angel should look like, right? All of these things. The weird thing about the book, though, is that it is one endless run-on sentence. Every sentence starts with "and." There are no capital letters to start a sentence. There are no periods in the entire 300 and some pages of the book. It is
Did that make it difficult to read?
It
like
made
adjusting
it difficult.
to it?
It at first, and then you kind of get into it. It made it difficult every time I came back to it. So every time I opened it up to read it again, I was like, where did I leave off at? Because it is literally one endless thought the entire way. It started a little slow and then it ramps up. And I think for me, the run-on sentence and the way that the book ends is essentially the idea that like, this is a never-ending battle and it's continually going and there's no reprieve for the soldiers that are in it. So there's no reprieve for you while you're reading this tale because it just continues and continues and continues. So Angel Down by Daniel Kraus, a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of religion, not really sci-fi, but a little bit of religion, a little bit of horror, a little bit of war. I enjoyed it, but I think it took a while to get over the weirdness of it being one nonstop, like endless chain of run-on sentences. But
yeah,
like,
but this
an interesting concept. I just don't know how it landed. I think I may have enjoyed the book more without it, but I don't think maybe it may not have felt the same. You know what I mean? It had a certain feel to it because of it.
Well, for long-time listeners of our podcast, we always talk about how if a comic book gives us something we haven't seen before, it's hard to say that we don't enjoy it, right?
Right.
Even if it's just a spread page laid out in some way we haven't seen. In some ways, that's harder to do with traditional prose because you don't have the visual aspect to mix things up with. So I always admire a novel that tries something new with punctuation or with page formatting or with that. So, but it does take a while to adjust, right, on there.
Yeah, for sure. It took me a little while to get used to it, but then when the story really ramps up, that feels right? Like the endless run-on feels right when it gets into the meat of the story. It felt a little weird at the beginning as you're getting your feet in the book. But it's one of the first ones I read this summer. Cool. What do you got for me, Travis? What else have you been reading?
I have Japanese Gothic by Kylie Lee Baker.
It's been on my list, sir. It's been on my
list. This one is it's shelved as probably horror. And I would question that shelving as it feels more like psychological. Okay, horror. Okay, I get it, but definitely psychological has to be in front of it. This is about a young American man who goes to live with his father in Japan to escape from this is not spoiling it, a crime that he believes that he has committed, a very brutal crime that he believes he committed. And he has to stay in this little Japanese house that is a very old samurai house that's been there for hundreds of years since the samurai generation. And what he finds in the house is a connection to samurai people who lived in that house hundreds of years ago. And there is a dark mystery. There is a dark fairy tale fantasy. And there is brutal, horrific crime in this novel. And it reads like a mystery as you're trying to figure out this house. However, I will say, if you are not a fan of novels that have very unlikable characters and you need some sort of heroic anchor or a
This doesn't have
character that you can see yourself into it? No, it does not. And I've read novels like this before, but sometimes they can feel oppressive where you're just like, okay, I'm interested in the mystery here, but like, God, like I really am not rooting for any of these characters. So
yeah.
let dirty things happen to them.
All right, I can dig that. Let's keep it on a
This
theme.
one. This is one of those where
Yeah.
you need to read the end. You could easily give up on it, but if you don't read the end, you miss the point.
Okay, so let's keep up with the theme. I read Strange Pictures by Oketsu.
Ooh, cool cover.
Oketsu is a YouTube sensation, Japanese. There's Oketsu right there. It's this guy just wears a mask. That's just what he looks like on the internet. No one knows who he is. He does a series of mystery posts.
Or she, maybe, huh?
She does it, and the voice is modulated, so you don't know what they sound like. After watching Backrooms, I was, so I saw Backrooms, and then this was supposed to be if you enjoyed the weirdness of the liminal space in Backrooms or the story about that, you should read. This is kind of a mystery about images. And so this is a handful of stories that you don't realize that are tying together until they do. And each story comes with like a mystery about images and photos.
Oh,
and
so I was going to ask you if they have
Yeah.
images in the actual novel. They do.
This one is about a children's drawing and then a series of pictures that a pregnant mother leaves her husband, and then the pictures that someone draws like when they are murdered while hiking. And so it is sort of, what's the mystery behind these images? Interesting, maybe not the best writing, but I got pulled along because I wanted to know what was happening. He has two other books, or they have two other books. So next up, I'm going to read Strange Houses, which is about like floor plans in a secret mystery room inside the house. So a very interesting mystery, something that it's prompting you to figure out yourself as you read it, but it suffers from the thing where you have to, when you're writing a mystery, that you have to tell people what the answer is. Right? How you do that can be good or bad. You think about the parlor room scene that's in every, like good mystery.
Yeah.
And you can do that really poorly or really interesting. I don't think this is done bad. I don't mean to say that, but I just think like and this is what really happened, or this is what
the setup can sometimes be better than the payoff.
Yes. And so I think the setup was better than the payoff until I got to the last story and somehow found that everything was very much connected and it looped back in on itself. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. You got me. I'll read the next thing you're doing. Right. It was a really interesting read. I enjoyed it. It was good.
That's a good segue into my next book, The Library at Mount Char. The Library at Mount Char is very much the payoff makes the patience of the setup worth it.
Okay.
This book is weird as batshit. It is one of those books that if you're, I wouldn't recommend it to like someone who's just getting back into reading, because it does require a lot of patience. And if you've taken a break from reading novels for a while, I would always recommend something that starts off like a shotgun and just rolls, right? It throws you into a world with characters that are talking to each other and descriptions that you have no idea what's happening. And that keeps that going for like 1/3 of the novel. Now, the reason you can get through it is because each of those scenes is so weird in its own. Like there's a guy with a tutu and a shotgun. There's a giant grill that's shaped like a golden bowl, and all these weird elements are just thrown in and talked about like they're normal. And it slowly starts tying these things together to get to the third act of the book, and it takes you into this cosmic, godlike.
So a little H.P. Lovecraft, a little Lovecraftian horror. cosmic
Yes,
gods?
yes, yeah. So
Okay.
basically, the library part comes in is because these characters live in an infinite library. It's a bunch of orphan children who live in an infinite library, who have an all-knowing father who assigns them parts of the library to learn specific knowledge skills, which they cannot share with the other inhabitants of the library. The story kicks off with that father, in quotes, going missing, and the children of the library trying to solve the mystery of where the father of the infinite library has gone.
Okay.
And it ends in a place that, if you have the patience for it, pays off in a way that, as someone who reads lots of books like you, I have not seen before. The storytelling style, Scott Hawkins, I think it's only maybe written one other thing. And I would be like, oh, I wish he had 10 other books, because I dig the style.
All right. So one that I read is called Pumpkin Seeds by Tyler Downs. And Travis Ratz, this is one I'm going to say definitely. Oh, the cover doesn't. That's a little weird because of the old Kindle. It is essentially the story of a private detective who was murdered 11 years ago. And every Halloween, his reanimated corpse is dug up so he can solve some terrible mystery in Salem, Massachusetts, because the veil is thin in Salem. So some sort of demon or monster comes out always during Halloween. And this Halloween, his reanimated corpse is brought back so that he can solve this demon possession that's going on. Real quick read, real snappy, real gruesome at parts, and just like a goofy wild ride with some real creepy stuff. But also, Tyler Downs does a really great job of like throwing you. There's rules. Why does he come back to life? Why does he have this voice in his head? What are all the rules to this? And you only get enough. It's very like there's no setup. You're just like, and his body gets dug up. Let's roll. And you get bits and pieces about why it works, but never the long process of like, well, why did this happen? Why are these rules existing? It's just there. It feels
sort of like what's that Western comic we read where they bring back the guy and he works for the Angels in that town? Series.
Yes, yeah.
I forgot what that was called, but
Cold as hell. Cold as hell.
Yeah, cold as hell.
But very much like that. Like, I'm not going to explain the rules to you. This is just how it works. So every year he's alive for like 1 week during Halloween, and then he dies and he gets buried again. Like it's.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So October, I know it seems like a far away. It's not that far away.
Read it. Read it during Halloween. It would be a great Halloween read.
It fills it in really well. You said it's quick read.
It is a quick read.
So
it's a quick read.
Yeah.
I really dug it, and I was like, oh, I want another one. Because I was like, oh, this is a great sort of like, you think of like the Jim Butcher, those books about it's very much that sort of like, let's just tell a gritty, gross horror story that's procedural enough that you could do it over and over and over again. I really dug it. I thought it was a really good book.
Yeah, it sounds like they will come out with more. It sounds like it's just like a Sherlock Holmes, but with like a dead detective that gets resurrected in Salem every Halloween. It sounds like
it was a really kind of cool way to do it.
Premise. Yeah. So this is my last one. This is one I'm almost done with. I got about another 70 pages. This is The Lies of Locke Lamora. Locke Lamora. This is by Scott Lynch. This is a classic, just fat fantasy paperback. You know, these are the kinds that just so you just love.
Oh yeah.
They're thick. This is. I'd seen this recommended on a lot of book channels for fantasy book novels, and one that I hadn't read. It's got a really nondescript cover, like you pass by it in the bookstore and not think anything of it. It is great. It's a fantasy world kind of swashbuckling novel, but here's the thing. It is written like if Charles Dickens wrote fantasy, it would be this. Meaning that
does it feel Victorian?
Yes, it feels Victorian. The the balance of dialogue and description is very Dickens-esque, where it just feels very serial, even though it's all in one novel. Even the premise is very Oliver Twist. It's this young kid who's kind of orphaned and brought into this thieves guild, who was first raised by this Fagin type character and then transferred over to a more mature thief. And now the story is him running his own, as an adult, his own hustles within this fantasy city. But we keep reflecting back to his childhood, almost in a Great Expectations Dickens way on it. So it feels like fantasy, but elevated, because it feels like that Dickens aspect makes it feel like literature. So you don't just feel like you're getting, and then the mana from the troll. No, it feels like, if this became popular, you could study this, right? It feels like it has the class of literature to it.
To wrap up my reading, I'm in my 2 books right now, right? So I always said I've got 2 books kind of going. I read a book about English football. I won't talk about that. But I'm reading 2 books right now. One's called The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break. And it is literally the Minotaur of Greek mythology. Is just he's been alive forever. He's free of the labyrinth, and he's in Middle America working at a diner as a cook in the kitchen. Yeah, and it's kind of this sort of slice of life. He works at this restaurant in the kitchen. He lives in a trailer park. It's kind of just world happening around a very kind of like socially awkward, vocally limited Minotaur as he's going through his life. And no one is like super shocked that he's a Minotaur. He's just kind of there. So that's the one I'm reading right now.
Suspension of disbelief. I'd seen that on some book things. Yeah. I'm like, I love the title. I love the premise. And you said you're reading it. I'm like, it reminded me of, who's the author who did like Jed, like Jesus' brother who comes back, and like the vampire stuff.
Christopher Moore.
Yes, it felt very Christopher Moore-esque.
The concept is very Christopher Moore. I will tell you, the writing is less. Chris Moore is very satirical and it's very beach ready. It feels heady. Vonnegut, right? Like just that piece. This is
like Gregor Samson woke up one day to find he'd been turned into a giant cockroach type shit.
Yes, yeah. And it talks about like he has this scar where his Minotaur half turns, like the bull half turns into the man. It's this very interesting thing. Yeah. This is a book, Travis, that I think is right up your alley. The other book I'm reading is called The Country Under Heaven. It is a Western novel, an epic Western about a cowboy, a former Union soldier making his way across the West. And as he makes his way across the West, he's experiencing these sort of supernatural, Lovecraftian, weird events. So far in this, I'm about halfway through.
Yeah, give me an example of one.
So he's traveling. He is moving sheep across he's sheep herding, right? Or cattle. They're cattle driving across, and they get stopped and said, no, you can't come through here anymore. You have to go around. So they go around and they find this giant mountain, and then there's an earthquake, and this Leviathan-like beast flies out of this giant hole in the ground and goes away. But it's like all of the story around it that kind of is like just weird and bizarre. But that's just one moment as he's herding cattle. And at the same time, he continues to see this monster that he can't see following him. It's like, you know how you can kind of see the Predator shimmer in the Predator movies? Yeah. He continues to see this thing that he calls a Crather follow him about, and he can have visions of what's going to happen. So he has visions throughout this story. Another one, he goes to find one of his old friends, and his friend has these green children that live with him. And he said that they came out of the forest one day, and these 2 children are all green. And so he asked the cowboys' help to go return them home. And so they have to go find this. He uses his vision, this being able to see, in order to take these 2 children back to their weird homeland that you find again where the veil is thin between 2 worlds. It's just very like this Western Louis L'Amour meets like just bizarre happenings in the West. So not as
actiony. Lovecraft. Yeah, Louis L'Amour. Lovecraft.
Yeah, not as
that's
actiony,
my Twitter handle.
Yeah, not as actiony as I thought it might be, but just kind of weird enough to keep pulling me along. And because it's like one part of his story after another, I'm curious to see how it might all tie together at the end. But that's the one I'm reading right now. Kind of enjoyable. The Country Under Heaven by Frederick S. Durbin, which is a great Western writer. Frederick S. Durbin. You got to have the middle initial.
Well, what I think I like about all our just kind of our summer reads, and these aren't our favorite books. These are just what we've read the last month, along with our summer graphic novel series. So between our individual reads and these kind of graphic novels that we picked up that you guys, if you were listening, you heard about, we've read some really wild and diverse stories. And I think just from looking at your picks and my picks, I think if you're a comic reader and you don't read a lot of novels, which is fine, you can read comic books. That's your thing. Read comic books. But if you're like, oh, I wish I would read more novels, or I want to read more novels, I don't know where to start. I think any of our like 8 or 9 books that we just talked about fit very well with genre and comic books. Yeah. I would say all 4 of my picks are like, if you like comic books and the stuff that we read from like Image or Marvel, like,
what is an Image comic book these days except like a strange genre pitch
eccentric
for a novel?
I'd say it has to be a little bit eccentric.
I read one in the spring called The Last Night to Kill Nazis, right? And it is about these World War II ends, Hitler kills himself, and the Nazis are trying to escape through the mountains to get a plane to go head to China and Argentina, right? And the American soldiers, they break out Dracula to go kill the Nazis. So it is literally, it's not Dracula, but it's a vampire in a coffin, and they pull the coffin with them to go get to the mountain pass.
Like an A-bomb,
Yeah, and they let the vampire loose to kill a bunch of Nazis on a mountain pass. That is the most Image comic book pitch ever, and it was a snappy read. They're out there. Those kinds of things, if you like those in comic books, those things are out there in novel form. And I will tell you, I am a habitually a less than 300 page reader. Like that's my wheelhouse. That's
good.
What I love. Is a 200 to 300 page book.
Knowing your boundaries of what you're going to finish. It's like at a restaurant, knowing what, when you're ordering, like, oh, I like that, I will eat that. Oh, that's going to be too much for me. Or like, oh, I had this. I think that is a great way to actually, if you're like, I'm not finishing books, is to start, deciding what you like, being unapologetic about it. Like, oh, if you only like cozy fantasy where it's like a dwarf and an elf falling in love in like a medieval bookstore, then just read cozy fantasy. Eventually, did you just
pitch that? Is that a real thing, or did you just pitch that?
It's cozy fantasy is a genre.
No, I mean that story about an elf and a dwarf falling in love in a bookstore.
But don't worry, we are not changing our podcast to novels. No. In fact, we are excited to jump back into comic books to finish out the fall and winter. God, this year is going by so quickly. And we're going to have a ton of books to talk about when we get to January for our New Year's. So we've kind of been throwing some ideas out. We know for certain some things that we're going to do. We believe our next episode is going to be Out of Alcatraz. Am I right, Josh, on that?
Yeah, next episode up is Out of Alcatraz. Tyler Crook is the artist on there. Christopher Cantwell is the writer. That's one I'm looking forward to. I love Tyler Cook. I think he's a great artist. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. You had thrown a Spider-Man book at us, so we might be checking out a Spider-Man run. We both saw Spider-Man Brand New Day. So we are like, oh, how do we get a little more Spider-Man in our life? And then, Travis, we haven't read a lot of Spider-Man for this show. It is something that I
only read one.
I know, maybe one or
Blue,
two.
Spider-Man Blue,
right? The entire history of the. No, I think we read, Travis. I also think we read a Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. I think we read
during Image Summer. Yeah,
yeah.
I think you're right.
Not Image Summer. I think we just read Marvel Summer. We read a Spider-Man, the Todd McFarlane.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I was like,
yes, I remember the Goblin being a part of it. Yeah, I remember the Hobgoblin being part of it. Yeah.
So, it's Spider-Man Death of Jean DeWolf might be on our
that
list.
Seems like a run that keeps coming up, and that character was in the movie. And so we haven't filled a lot of comic holes this year. No. Things that are like in the oh, you haven't read this run. So I thought that might be an option on there. You had mentioned Spectators. I did download it. So that's the Brian K. Vaughan one.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do that sometime in the upcoming months. What else? What else is on our radar that we know we want to read?
We talked a little bit about possibly doing Assorted Crisis Events. That's a kind of anthology sci-fi series. There's a couple books. We've talked about how we've never read. I think we've read one Avengers book the entire time that we've done the show, and that was an old school during that Marvel summer where we went and read the Kree Skrull War. Like we were let's go really do an old Avengers book. So I don't know if there's a new one we want to check out. So I would say, comic book fans, send us a message on Instagram. Go, hey, I think you should read this one. Tell us what we should read. Give us some ideas. We got to get some books for the fall, for September and November and December. And then, of course, it's always spooky season. We got to find what spooky books we're going to read for the Halloween season. So you had one possibly for Halloween. What was the one that you?
Yeah, Exquisite Corpses. It's been around for a while, and it always keeps popping up. Is that Tinian? And I took a look at the art. I'm like, this is cool. I don't know. It feels like The Purge, but weird, wild stuff, Josh.
Weird, wild stuff.
I feel like maybe our last couple of spooky seasons were okay and some enjoyable stuff on there, but it felt like we're still looking for like the peak of spooky season.
Yeah, we had Basket Full of Heads, and it's hard to get back to that. I don't know
that was a good spooky season. Yeah,
I don't know that we'll find that book again, Travis Rats. But we're looking, or Witches. Remember that was such a you know what they're doing? They're tapping that well. They're bringing Witches,
putting
back.
It all into one and giant.
The little beautiful hardcover thing that I think they're trying to do. That would be great. I have an oversized copy of Witches on my shelf somewhere with like giant, huge copy of Witches with giant blown
big witches.
Parts. Big witches. I like big witches. So
big witches spending G's.
That's right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. You can find the show over on the internet at comicexposure.com. You can find us on Instagram at Comic Exposure. That's EX, not X. X is this weird, I think is a comic shop that has some trouble, is what I'll say. We get emails for them. And then you can find some t-shirts, merch, stuff like that over at comicexposure.threadless.com. Write us a review, rate us, whatever on your podcast app. It's a way that people find the show. Share us out. You can find us on YouTube at Comic Exposure. Yeah, guys, that's it. That's the show. I know we didn't talk about comic books today, but sometimes you got to talk about other stuff. We don't do it very often. So thanks, and we'll see you next trade.